You know when life suddenly reminds you that all your love, effort, and loyalty might not mean a thing to the wrong person? Yeah, this is one of those stories. But before I start, make sure you subscribe to her revenge stories and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? I love seeing where everyone's tuning in. Anyway, my name's Rachel. I'm 24, and this all happened on a day that started like any other. Quiet, predictable, and completely unaware that my whole world was about to flip upside down. That morning, I woke up early, the way I always did. I was sitting at the small wooden table in our apartment's kitchen, sipping instant coffee that tasted more like cardboard than caffeine. The blinds were half open, and sunlight was cutting lines across the floor. On the counter sat my laptop, open to a spreadsheet filled with invoices, orders, and customer names. Tom's business, the one I'd helped him start from scratch. He was still asleep, like always. Tom wasn't a morning person. He'd say that real creativity started afternoon, and I'd laugh it off because I wanted to believe in him. I believed in his dream long before anyone else did. Back then, he was just a guy with a cheap logo idea, a used laptop, and a heart full of confidence. We'd met 2 years earlier at a coffee shop near campus. I was a marketing major finishing my senior year. He was this ambitious, slightly scruffy guy with messy hair and a smile that made you forget what you were saying. He told me he wanted to start an online store selling eco-friendly stationery, journals made from recycled paper, bamboo pens, stuff like that. I thought it was sweet, different. He had this way of talking about his dream that made it sound possible. So I jumped in. I built the website myself on weekends, wrote product descriptions, handled the Instagram page, even packaged orders at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like ours. We weren't just dating, we were building something together. And slowly it started working. Sales trickled in. A few influencers mentioned the brand. I still remember the night he got his first big order. He ran into the living room, spinning me around, shouting, "We did it, Ratch." We ordered pizza and stayed up till 3 a.m. talking about the future. Back then, I believed that hard work and love could make anything last. But that morning, the one this story is about, I could feel something different. I couldn't explain it, but the air between us had changed. Tom walked into the kitchen around 9, shirtless, hair messy. He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, like a habit, and mumbled, "You already working again? You should relax sometimes." "I'm just finalizing the invoice for the printer," I said. "We're running low on packaging." He nodded, but I noticed his eyes drift to his phone almost immediately. That used to bother me, but I'd learned not to bring it up. Every time I did, he'd say I was overthinking. An hour later, he left for a meeting. I watched him put on that gray button-down shirt, the one I'd ironed the night before, and spritz cologne like he was auditioning for a commercial. I asked who the meeting was with, and he said, "Just a supplier. Don't wait up for lunch." I wanted to believe him. I really did. I worked through the morning, answering customer emails, updating inventory, checking analytics. Around noon, I got a message from Erin, his new assistant. She was a year younger than me, fresh out of college, and Tom had hired her 2 months ago when orders started picking up. I was actually the one who suggested we needed help. I even helped interview her. She was polite, eager, a little too flirty when Tom was around, but I ignored that. Her text was short. "Hey Rachel, just confirming the supplier meeting at noon got rescheduled. Tom said he'll be at the office instead." That sentence didn't sit right. If the meeting was rescheduled, why hadn't he mentioned it? And why was she texting me instead of him? I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, before I finally typed back, "Thanks for letting me know." I told myself not to spiral. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he'd really gone to the office. Maybe Erin was just trying to be helpful. But by 3 o'clock, my gut was twisting. Something was off. I decided to stop by the office to drop off some new samples that had just arrived. I didn't text him first. I just grabbed my keys and left. Our office wasn't far, a small rented space downtown with glass doors and plants I'd picked out myself. When I walked in, the front desk was empty. Erin's desk sat by the window, her pink water bottle sitting next to her open notebook. I called out, "Hey, Erin? You here?" Silence. The door to Tom's office was slightly ajar. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the frame. And then I heard it, the sound of laughter. Soft, intimate laughter. Hers. I pushed the door open just enough to see them. Tom sitting on the couch, Erin leaning toward him, her hand brushing his arm. They were talking close, too close. My stomach clenched. He saw me before she did. His face went pale. Rachel, what are you doing here? I brought the samples, I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. Didn't know the meeting was canceled. Erin straightened up, pretending to adjust her hair. Oh, we were just discussing the new designs. Right, I said. You look really focused. The room fell silent. Tom stood up, stepping toward me, but I didn't move. I just handed him the box and walked out before my voice could crack. The air outside felt heavier. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, my hand shaking. I wasn't crying, not yet. I was just stunned. When I got home, I didn't know what to do. Every corner of our apartment screamed of us, his jacket on the chair, his toothbrush next to mine, his coffee mug in the sink. I turned on the TV just to drown out the thoughts, but even the noise couldn't fill the silence in my chest. He came home around 6. Didn't even look guilty. Hey, he said casually, setting down his keys. You left pretty quick earlier. Yeah, I replied. Didn't want to interrupt your design discussion. He froze for a second, then forced a laugh. Rachel, come on. Don't make it weird. Erin and I were just brainstorming. You know how close we've been working lately. I stared at him. Too close, apparently. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're reading into things again. You always do this. You don't trust me. That line hit like a slap. After everything I'd done for him, for his business, for his dream, he was turning it on me. I gave up my savings to help you start that business, I said quietly. I built your website. I packed orders until 2 in the morning. And now you're telling me I'm paranoid. He looked away, jaw tight. I didn't ask you to. The words cut through me. He didn't ask me to, but he let me. He let me believe we were partners, that all this effort meant something. I didn't sleep that night. He went to bed like nothing happened, scrolling his phone until the room went dark. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing for the first time that the person next to me wasn't the same man I'd fallen for. By dawn, I made my decision. Not to scream, not to beg, not to expose him online. Something quieter. Smarter. Something that would remind him who really built everything he now took credit for. Because if he wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, then maybe it was time he saw what his success looked like without me. And as the sun came up, I opened my laptop and started typing, not a love letter, not a goodbye, but a plan. The apartment was still dim when I started working. Tom was asleep in the bedroom, breathing deep like nothing in the world had changed, while I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of cold coffee. The cursor blinked on the screen like it was waiting for me to finally do what I'd been afraid to do for months, take control. I opened the share drive first. Everything we'd built together, invoices, branding files, supplier contacts, it was all there. I remembered how excited I'd been when we first started uploading documents there. Back then, I'd thought we meant forever. But now, looking at it, I saw something else, a record of how much I'd done, how much he'd leaned on me. Every logo variation, every social media post, every campaign strategy had my fingerprints on it. For a few minutes, I just scrolled. My chest felt heavy, but there was also this strange calm. I wasn't planning revenge in the way people think. No drama, no yelling. I just wanted balance. Fairness. Tom always joked that I was the brains and he was the face. It wasn't far from the truth. Without me, he wouldn't even know how to run his own ad campaigns or talk to suppliers or handle customer feedback. I'd done everything while he posed for photos with the products, smiling like he'd done it all. So I decided to remind him of that. The first thing I did was open the bank account linked to our store. My name wasn't on it, a mistake I now regretted, but the PayPal and Stripe accounts for online orders still used my email. I could still access every transaction, every payout. And what I saw made my pulse quicken. Deposits I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars that had never been mentioned to me. That hurt more than anything. Not the money itself, but the secret behind it. He'd been hiding how well the business was doing, acting broke, asking me to cover groceries, while he was quietly stacking profits. I sat back in my chair, staring at the numbers. My mind felt sharp, almost detached, like my emotions had finally taken a back seat and logic was steering now. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of watching me break. Instead, I downloaded everything, every transaction, every receipt, every document that proved I'd been there from the start. I moved it all to a new folder on my external drive, labeling it simply, Proof. By the time Tom stumbled out of the bedroom around 9, I had already showered, dressed, and made breakfast. He looked surprised to see me so calm. "Morning," he said, rubbing his eyes. "You're up early again." "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Coffee's ready." He smiled faintly, like we were still normal, still us. I almost laughed at how easily he slipped into pretending. We ate in silence for a few minutes. He scrolled his phone, probably texting Aaron. I could tell by the little smirk on his face. I didn't say a word. When he got up to leave for the office, he kissed the top of my head, just like always. Habit, not love. "Don't wait up," he said. I nodded. "I won't." When the door closed, I exhaled, feeling something inside me click into place. I had the whole day to myself, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I called Maya, my best friend since college, the kind of person who saw through everything. We hadn't talked much lately because I'd been too busy helping Tom. "Rach?"
"Wow, it's been a while," she said.
"You okay? You sound weirdly calm." "I'm fine," I said, and for once, I almost meant it. "Listen, do you still have that contact for the event organizer in town? The one who helped your brother with his pop-up?"
"Yeah, why?"
"I'm thinking of hosting something. Kind of last minute." There was a pause. "Rachel, are you finally leaving him?" I smiled. "Let's just say I'm planning something better." After we hung up, I spent the next few hours working. I updated the website, quietly, carefully. Nothing drastic. Just enough that anyone visiting it would notice subtle changes. The About Us page now read, "Founded and designed by Rachel Lewis and Tom Avery." A small edit, but one that put my name exactly where it belonged. Then I drafted an email. It was to all our top suppliers, the ones I'd personally negotiated with. I told them there would be a short-term pause in new orders due to an internal restructuring. I used the company email Tom never bothered checking, so it wouldn't raise suspicion right away. By noon, I'd done everything I could online. It wasn't sabotage, it was reclaiming space. And then I decided to see Aaron. I drove downtown, heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't even sure what I planned to say, but I needed to look her in the eye. The office parking lot was mostly empty, except for Tom's car and her little blue hatchback. The receptionist looked up as I walked in.
Rachel."
Tom just stepped out for lunch with a client. Of course he had. "Is Erin here?" I asked. "Yeah, she's in the back." I found her at her desk, typing something. She looked up, startled. "Rachel."
"Hey."
What a surprise. Her tone was sweet, but her body stiffened like she'd been caught doing something wrong. "I just came to drop off some forms." I lied, holding a random folder I'd brought. "You mind if we talk for a sec?" "Sure," she said hesitantly. I leaned against her desk, smiling faintly. "I know about you and Tom." Her face went white. "What? No, Rachel, it's not." "Don't bother," I interrupted softly. "I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to thank you." She blinked. "Thank me?"
"Yeah."
"For making me see who he really is." It's funny, I spent 2 years building him up, thinking he was loyal, decent, worth my time. Turns out, all it took was a new assistant to show me I was wrong. She stared at me, guilt flickering across her face. "Rachel, I didn't mean, don't worry," I said, picking up my folder. "You'll understand soon enough." I walked out before she could respond, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. It wasn't revenge, not yet, just closure. She could have him if she wanted. I was done competing for a man who didn't deserve me. Back in my car, I sat there for a moment, watching people walk by, strangers, each caught up in their own lives. For the first time in months, I realized how small Tom's world had made mine. Everything revolved around him. His work, his moods, his plans. I'd stopped dreaming for myself. That thought stung more than the betrayal itself. I started driving without thinking too much about where I was going. Ended up at the old coffee shop near campus, the same one where I'd first met him. It was quieter now, most of the tables empty. I ordered an iced latte and sat by the window, watching the world move on like it always does. My phone buzzed. A message from Tom. Tom, need you to send the client list to Aaron ASAP. We're closing a new deal. I stared at the text. The same man who told me I was reading into things now wanted me to hand over the work I'd built to her. I typed back, sure thing. Then I attached the file, but not the most recent version. Just the older one, missing the newest contacts. Let him figure that out later. When I looked up from my phone, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked tired, but stronger somehow. Like someone finally remembering who she was before she got lost in someone else's story. Around 5, I headed home. The sky was turning gold, and the city lights were starting to flicker on. I opened the apartment windows to let the evening breeze in and lit a candle, the kind Tom always said gave him a headache. For once, the air smelled like mine. I made pasta, poured a glass of wine, and sat at the table eating alone. It didn't feel sad, it felt freeing. When Tom came in around 7, I was halfway through my meal. He looked surprised to see me so composed. Hey, he said cautiously. How was your day? Productive, I said, smiling. Yours? He nodded. I drafted an email, a proposal for something new. My own project. A small online shop, simple and clean, focused on custom journal designs. The kind of thing I'd always wanted to do but never did because his business came first. I didn't have much, but I had enough skills, ideas, and proof of everything I'd learned. And as I clicked Save Draft, I realized something. Maybe losing him wasn't the end of anything. Maybe it was the start. That night, when he came to bed, he reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. I was already somewhere else, in a future that no longer included him. That I woke up before Tom the next morning, or rather, before his alarm went off. But it wasn't a new day. It was still the same stretch of hours that had been unfolding since yesterday afternoon, the same long emotional storm I hadn't quite stepped out of yet. The light outside hadn't changed much, gray sliding into gold and back again. Time felt strange, elastic, like everything was happening inside one long, drawn-out breath. He was snoring softly, tangled in the sheets, and I sat up, pulling the blanket around me. I watched him for a moment, not with anger, but with a kind of numb curiosity. How do you sleep so easily when you've broken someone's trust? Maybe that's the difference between people like me and people like him. We feel everything until it burns holes inside us, while they close their eyes and drift off. I got up quietly, grabbed my hoodie, and padded out to the kitchen. The air smelled faintly like the pasta I'd made last night. My laptop sat on the table, still open, the cursor blinking where I'd left my new business plan draft. It felt almost alive, like it was waiting for me to decide if I was serious. I poured myself a cup of water, stared at the screen, and whispered, "You can do this." It wasn't some dramatic movie moment. It was just a small promise to myself. I opened a new document and began outlining the name ideas I jotted down in my phone notes over the months, back when I still thought they might be for Tom's brand. Paper harbor, kind pages, woven words. But none of them felt right anymore. They all sounded too much like him, too much like something that would eventually leave me behind. Then I thought about my grandmother, who used to say, "Start where your hands are." She was the kind of woman who'd rebuild a whole garden after a storm without complaining once. That phrase stuck with me. I typed it slowly, hands first. It felt simple, honest, something that was mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Maya, got you the contact for that event guy. He says he's free to meet this evening if you want. I smiled. Evening, that still counted as today. Everything was happening now. Me. Perfect. Text me the address. I spent the next couple of hours refining the plan. I made a mock-up website using a free template, wrote a few blurbs, picked a color palette that felt warm and clean. I wasn't trying to compete with Tom's company. I just wanted something that reflected me. Something small, honest, creative. Around 11, Tom stumbled out of the bedroom. You working again? Always, I said without looking up. He poured coffee and leaned against the counter. You're quiet lately. Everything okay? I wanted to laugh. Now he asks. I'm fine, I said. Just thinking about new ideas. He looked curious but distracted. We got that pitch meeting later. Can you prep the social numbers for me? I closed my laptop softly. Actually, I've got plans tonight. You might have to handle it yourself. That threw him off. He frowned. Plans?
Yeah.
Something for me, for once. He hesitated, then nodded like he didn't want to push it. Okay. Just make sure Aaron gets those analytics before 5, all right? Sure, I said, even though I had no intention of doing that. He left soon after, taking his laptop bag and cologne with him. The door clicked shut, and for the first time all day, I smiled. I grabbed my notebook, scribbled a few sketches for a product label, simple, handwritten, organic. Then I packed my things, brushed my hair, and left for the meeting Maya had set up. The cafe where we met was on the edge of downtown, filled with plants and the sound of espresso machines. Evan, the event organizer, was already there, mid-30s, friendly, the kind of guy who could talk logistics without making it boring. So, he said after introductions, you're launching your own line? What's the story behind it? I hesitated, not wanting to sound bitter. I helped build another company, gave it everything, but now I'm ready to build something that's just mine. He smiled like he understood. That's the best kind of story. People love authenticity. You'd be surprised how many want to support small creators with real passion. We talked for nearly an hour about booth setups, marketing ideas, budget options. He offered me a discounted slot at a local artisan market coming up next month. I almost said no, thinking about money. But then I remembered the emergency savings I still had tucked away, the small amount I'd kept separate from Tom's business. I'll take it, I said. Walking out of that cafe felt like stepping into sunlight after weeks of rain. I wasn't getting even. I was finally getting free. On the drive home, I played old songs I hadn't listened to in years, the kind that made me remember who I used to be, before business meetings and brand pitches and pretending to be the supportive girlfriend every second of the day. I realized how small my world had become, how everything revolved around Tom's ambitions. When I got back to the apartment, his car wasn't there yet. I opened the windows, let fresh air in, and sat down to make one last edit to the website. A soft background photo, a quote my grandmother used to say, "Your hands know how to begin again." It looked perfect.
Simple.
Peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Aaron. Aaron, hey, not sure if you know, but Tom told me we're meeting with the investors at 8 tonight instead of tomorrow. Could you send the updated pitch deck? I stared at the message, then looked at the clock. 6:42 p.m. So he'd lied again. Said he had a meeting later, but of course it was with her. Again. I almost ignored it. But then, an idea sparked. Quiet, almost playful. Not revenge. Just truth. I opened the pitch deck. It was the same presentation I'd helped him build, full of photos, product examples, and financials. I added one more slide at the end. Just a short statement in white text on a black background. Behind every dreamer is someone who built the dream until they were forgotten. I didn't sign it. I just saved the file, replaced the original, and sent it to Aaron. By the time Tom came home that night, the apartment was dimly lit, calm. He walked in, tossed his keys on the table, and smiled like nothing unusual had happened. Long day, he said, loosening his collar. Meeting went well, though. Investors seemed impressed. I'm sure they did, I said, folding laundry on the couch. Did they like the presentation? He paused, eyes flicking toward me. Yeah, they did. Actually, there was this one slide at the end. I don't even know where it came from, but they thought it was poetic. I raised an eyebrow. Really? He nodded slowly, still confused. Something about being forgotten? One of them said it felt like a statement about the environment or something. I smiled to myself. Sounds meaningful. He shrugged, wandering off toward the shower, muttering something about needing dinner. I sat there, folding his shirts neatly one by one, and realized how little any of this mattered to me now. He could take the credit. He could play the visionary. But deep down, I knew the truth, and soon enough, others would too. At 9:30, Maya texted me again. Maya, how'd it go today? Me. Better than I expected. I think I'm actually excited again. Maya. About him?
No.
About me. I set my phone down and looked around the apartment. The same space that once felt like our home now looked like a waiting room I'd been stuck in for too long. On impulse, I opened the closet and started pulling my clothes off hangers, folding them neatly into a suitcase. It wasn't a big dramatic decision, it just felt like the next natural step. I didn't know exactly where I'd go yet, maybe stay with Maya for a bit. But what I did know was that I didn't want to wake up tomorrow in this same apartment pretending life was still okay. Tom came out of the shower, towel around his waist, humming to himself. When he saw the open suitcase, he froze. What are you doing? I looked up calmly. Packing. Packing for what? For me, I said. You were right. We've grown in different directions. I just decided to stop pretending. He stepped forward, confusion mixing with disbelief. Rachel, come on, don't be dramatic. I'm not. I interrupted softly. You have everything you wanted. The business, the attention, your assistant. I'm just taking what's mine, my piece. He stared at me, speechless. For the first time in a long while, he didn't have a clever line ready. I'll leave the keys on the counter, I added. You can figure out the rest. And before he could say anything else, I zipped up the suitcase and walked past him. The night air outside was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. I felt my heart race, not from sadness, but from freedom. I got in my car, took one last look at the apartment window, and whispered to myself, hands first. Then I drove off, not toward some dramatic ending, but toward something simpler, truer, something that finally belonged to me. The evening air outside the restaurant felt cooler than I expected. I stood there for a second, clutching my purse like it was the only steady thing in my life. Inside, laughter from other tables drifted through the windows, soft, muffled, normal. The kind of normal that felt like it belonged to everyone, but me. I didn't cry. Not there, at least. I'd promised myself that much. So, I walked down the street, head up, my heels clicking against the pavement. My mind was still spinning from what I'd seen, Tom's hand brushing over that woman's arm, the whispering, the stolen glance, the familiar kind of smile he used to save just for me. His assistant of all people. When I got home, the apartment felt too bright. I turned off every light one by one until the place was dim and quiet. My phone buzzed twice, Tom. I watched it light up on the counter, the name glowing like something from another lifetime. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I watched it start again. And again. By the fourth call, I finally answered. Hey, he said, like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't just destroyed what we'd built together. Don't, I whispered. Don't you dare. He sighed. It's not what you think, Emily. I swear, it's complicated. I laughed, a small, bitter sound that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Complicated? That's the word you're going with? You were sitting in a corner booth with your hand on her, Tom. The same girl you told me was like a little sister to you. She is like that, he said quickly. We were talking about a client deal. She got emotional. You're twisting it. I'm twisting it? I felt my voice shaking, but I didn't care. I gave you everything I had, my time, my money, my faith, and you're still standing there trying to convince me I didn't see what I saw.
He paused.
You don't understand how much stress I've been under. Stress doesn't make you unbutton your morals, I said quietly. You did that all on your own. There was silence, long enough that I could hear my own breathing. Then he said, softer now, "Emily, I love you. Please don't throw this away over one misunderstanding." I almost wanted to believe him. I almost wanted to be the naive girl who thought love could fix everything. But something inside me had already cracked open, and once that happens, there's no going back. "I'm not throwing anything away, Tom," I said, steadying my voice. "You did that the moment you forgot who was standing beside you when you had nothing." And I hung up. I sat on the floor, my back against the couch, the room dim and quiet again. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my fingertips. There was no anger left, just a heavy sort of exhaustion that made me want to sleep for a year. But I didn't sleep. I stayed up, staring at the faint city lights through the window, thinking about every single late night I'd spent helping him draft proposals, every coffee run when he was too busy to get up, every reassurance I'd given him when he doubted himself. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. One from Tom, one from my best friend Nora, and one from an unknown number that turned out to be from the company's new accountant. Apparently, Tom had transferred my shares, into his name for legal clarity. That was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for myself. By noon, I was sitting at my laptop, scrolling through old emails, invoices, and contracts. I'd kept everything neatly stored in a folder labeled business stuff. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind me that I'd been more than just his girlfriend. I'd been his partner. Nora called again. Are you okay?" "I've been better," I said, typing something while we talked. "Do you want me to come over?" "No," I said. "But I need you to tell me something. Remember when we helped him register the company? You still have that folder from the notary's office." "Yeah, why?" "I think it's time I remind him who helped build that business." She didn't ask questions after that. Nora had always been the kind of friend who understood silence. By evening, I had everything laid out on the table, the contracts, receipts, bank transfers, screenshots. Every tiny thread that connected me to his success. I looked at them like puzzle pieces, realizing how easily I'd let him take credit for what we'd built together. Tom called again. This time, I answered. "I've been thinking," he started. "We should meet. Talk this out like adults." "Sure," I said. "Come by the apartment at 8. He sounded relieved. "Good. I knew you'd listen. I'll bring dinner, okay?" "Bring your assistant too," I said flatly. "You both seem to do everything together." He hesitated. "Emily, don't be like that." "See you at 8, I said, and hung up. At 7:50, I sat at my kitchen table, every document neatly stacked beside my coffee mug. My hands were steady now. I wasn't planning a scene. I was planning clarity. Tom showed up right on time, holding a takeout bag and wearing that same confident smile that used to melt me. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "Don't," I said. "Sit down." He hesitated, then placed the food on the counter and sat across from me. "What's all this?" he asked, glancing at the papers. "This," I said, tapping the pile, "is what your success looks like. Every dollar I lent you, every contract I drafted, every piece of this business you're now pretending is yours alone." He leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm implying," I said, "that you can't erase me from something I helped create. You may have changed the paperwork, but I have proof. And if you try to fight me, I'll take this proof exactly where it needs to go." His jaw tightened. "You wouldn't do that." "I would," I said, meeting his gaze. "You might have thought I was just some girl who'd sit quietly while you rewrote the story, but you forgot. I'm the one who taught you how to write it." He exhaled, looking down. "Emily, please. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We can figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out," I said. "You can either fix what you stole, or I'll make sure every client you have knows how you got here." He didn't respond, just stared at the table, jaw working. For the first time in months, I wasn't scared of losing him. I was scared of losing myself if I didn't stand up now. Finally, he nodded.
Fine.
"I'll make it right." "I'll believe that," I said, "when I see my name back on the papers." He stood, gathering the bag of food. "You're angry now," he said softly, "but someday you'll see this differently." "No," I said, watching him walk to the door. "Someday you will." When the door clicked shut, the silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, like fresh air after a storm. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. My hands were still shaking a little, but there was a new kind of calm beneath it. The kind that comes when you finally stop waiting for someone to change and start trusting yourself too. For the first time that day, I smiled. Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't the end. It was just the start of me finally getting my life and my power back. I didn't hear from Tom for 3 days after that night. 3 whole days of silence that felt both freeing and strange. The kind of quiet that used to make me anxious now felt like peace. I started sleeping again, eating real meals, and taking walks around the park near my apartment. It was funny how space from someone could make you realize how much of yourself you'd given away. On the 4th day, an email came in at noon. The subject line read, "Regarding ownership adjustment." My hands hovered over the keyboard before I opened it. Inside was a brief message from Tom, formal and clipped, like we'd never shared a life together. "Emily, I've restored your shares to reflect our original agreement. You'll receive updated documents later this week. I hope we can part on respectful terms.
No apology. No worms.
Just business." I leaned back in my chair, reading the lines over and over. My first instinct was to feel angry that this man, who'd once held my face like it was something sacred, now treated me like an entry in a ledger. But then I exhaled, slow and deep, because beneath that cold tone was something else. Acknowledgement. He hadn't erased me. I forwarded the email to my lawyer friend, Diane, who confirmed it looked legitimate. She asked if I wanted to push further, maybe demand compensation for unpaid work or emotional damages. But I said no. I didn't want a war. I just wanted my dignity back. That night, Nora came over with a bottle of cheap wine and 2 paper cups. We sat on my balcony, the city glowing below us. "So, you really did it," she said, grinning. "You stood up to him." "I guess I did," I said, laughing softly. "It still feels unreal. I thought I'd be devastated, but mostly, I feel relieved." "That's what happens when you stop holding someone else's mess," she said. "You finally have room for your own peace."
We toasted to that.
At one point, she asked me, "What are you going to do now? You could sell your shares, maybe start something new." "I don't know yet," I said, staring at the skyline. "But I think I want to build something again, something that's mine this time. No one else's name on it." She smiled. "That sounds like you." Later, after she left, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The folder where I'd kept all the old documents was still sitting there, a digital time capsule of late nights and shared dreams. I clicked through the photos. Our first delivery truck, our opening day celebration, Tom cutting the ribbon while I stood slightly out of frame, holding a clipboard and smiling like I belonged there. I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I dragged it into a new folder I titled Lessons. Because that's what it all was now, a lesson. Around 10 p.m., I got another message. This one wasn't from Tom. It was from Rachel, his assistant. Her name in my inbox made my stomach twist. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. But curiosity won. I opened it. "Hi, Emily. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say something. I didn't mean to come between you and Tom. Things just happened. I know that's no excuse. But I want you to know he always talked about how much you helped him. I'm sorry for how things turned out. I really am." I stared at the screen, feeling a dozen emotions at once. Anger, sadness, maybe even pity. She was young. Only 23, maybe 24. The same age I was when I first started believing in Tom's potential.
I didn't reply.
Not because I hated her, but because there was nothing to say. We were both caught in the same illusion once, believing in a man who built his identity from borrowed strength. I closed the email and shut my laptop. Then I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched since all this began, and started writing. Not about Tom or the betrayal, but about me, about what I'd learned, what I wanted next, what kind of woman I was becoming. The words poured out faster than I expected, like they'd been waiting for space to breathe. I helped someone else build his dream. I wrote. And when he left, I thought I had nothing left. But what I really built was strength, the kind you only discover when everything else is gone. When I put the pen down, I realized I wasn't sad anymore. The next morning, I woke up early and decided to go out for breakfast. A little diner a few blocks away had become my quiet escape. Strong coffee, pancakes that came in stacks too big to finish, and the kind of regulars who nodded hello without asking questions. As I sat there, watching sunlight hit the window, I caught sight of a "Help Wanted" sign near the register. It wasn't anything fancy, just a local bakery opening soon, looking for help with marketing and social media. Something about it made me smile. After paying my bill, I walked up to the counter and asked about it. The owner, a kind woman named Margaret, handed me an application and said, "We're a small place, but we're trying to grow. If you've got experience with small businesses, that'd be a big help." I almost laughed. "You could say that," I said. By the end of the week, I was working with her part-time, helping design menus, setting up online pages, even brainstorming ideas for branding. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every decision, every idea, felt like a tiny step back toward myself. And one afternoon, while showing Margaret how to schedule posts online, she looked at me and said, "You know, you're really good at this. You should think about doing it full-time, consulting maybe?" That night, the idea stayed with me. A small business consultant, helping others do what I'd once helped Tom do, but this time with boundaries, respect, and credit where it was due. I stayed up late sketching out names for a potential brand, ideas, logos. For the first time in months, I felt excitement instead of ache. Then, almost poetically, Tom texted, "I hope you're doing okay. I'm sorry for how things ended. Maybe someday we can talk." I looked at the message for a full minute, letting the quiet hum of the fridge fill the room. I typed back only 2 words, "I'm good." Then I turned my phone face down, poured a glass of wine, and got back to sketching ideas. Outside, the city hummed like it always did. Somewhere out there, Tom was probably sitting in his fancy new office, next to someone else, believing he'd moved on. But as I sat there, surrounded by notes, papers, and plans that were mine alone, I realized something simple and beautiful. He may have left me behind, but he hadn't taken me with him. For the first time in a long time, I was building again, not for love, not for someone else's dream, but for me. And that felt better than revenge ever could. The morning sunlight crept across my kitchen counter, glinting off a mug that read, "One step at a time." It had been 3 weeks since that final text from Tom. 3 quiet, steady weeks of rediscovering what peace actually felt like. Not the fragile kind that depends on someone else keeping promises, but the kind that comes from knowing you've finally stopped fighting battles that were never yours to win. My days had a rhythm again. Early coffee, music humming low in the background, work calls, and the soft hum of new beginnings. I'd officially filed my business name. Mark Consulting, a blend of my name and the word Mark, because that's what I wanted to do now, leave a mark, but on my own terms. I helped small local businesses with branding, social media, and startup strategy. The kind of people who reminded me of who I used to be. Hungry, hopeful, and terrified. It felt good to give that energy a home again. I spent that morning finalizing a client proposal when my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from the Chamber of Commerce. I'd been invited to a local small business networking event, something I hadn't attended since the early days with Tom. I stared at the invitation for a moment, wondering if I was ready to be in that kind of crowd again. But then I smiled. Of course I was. By evening, I slipped into a light blue dress, tied my hair back, and looked at myself in the mirror. There were faint circles under my eyes still, but they didn't bother me anymore. They were reminders that I'd lived through something and come out stronger. The event was held at a downtown hotel, all soft lighting and cheerful chatter. I recognized a few familiar faces from years ago, people who used to only talk to Tom. Now, some of them looked at me with surprise, and maybe even a bit of respect. A woman approached me with a glass of wine in hand. Emily, right? I remember you from Brightmark Interiors. You were the brains behind their first campaign. I smiled. Something like that. We chatted a while about her shop, her marketing struggles, her hesitation to expand. I gave her a few small suggestions, just casual advice. By the time she walked away, she'd asked for my card. That tiny moment, her asking for my help, made something warm bloom in my chest. Halfway through the evening, I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The city lights shimmered below, traffic murmuring like a steady heartbeat. I was checking my phone when I heard a voice behind me. Didn't expect to see you here. I turned and there he was.
Tom.
He looked older somehow. Maybe not in years, but in energy. The same expensive suit, the same easy grin, but it didn't reach his eyes anymore. I felt my chest tighten for a split second, out of old habit, but it faded almost instantly. Tom, I said simply. You look busy. He chuckled. Always am. Business is doing well. You know how it goes. I do, I said. I've been keeping busy myself. He nodded, like he already knew. I've seen your posts online. Looks like you're doing great. You always had a good head for this stuff. For a moment, we just stood there. The silence between us wasn't angry or tense. It was just quiet, filled with all the words we'd already said, and all the ones we didn't need to anymore. He took a step closer. Listen, Emily. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how it ended. You didn't deserve that. His voice sounded genuine, softer than I remembered. And maybe once, that would have cracked me open again. But not now. I know, I said calmly. And I hope you learned something from it. He nodded, looking down. Rachel and I, well, that didn't really work out. I almost smiled. I'm sorry to hear that. He looked at me like he was trying to read my tone, but I kept my expression kind. Because the truth was, I didn't feel smug or vindicated. I just felt done. You've changed, he said after a pause.
Eve grown, corrected kindly.
He gave a faint smile. You always did have a way with words. For a moment, there was this strange peace between us. Not reconciliation, not friendship, just acknowledgement. Two people who'd shared a chapter, now standing at the edge of different stories. Well, he said finally, slipping his hands into his pockets. I'm glad you're doing okay, Emily. You deserve it.
Thanks, I said.
I really am okay. He nodded once, then turned and walked back inside. I stood there for a moment longer, looking out at the city lights, feeling the cool breeze against my skin. There was no rush of triumph, no surge of revenge. Just a calm sense of closure, like the last page of a book you finally stopped rereading. Inside, the event continued. People laughed, clinked glasses, swapped business cards. I joined back in, smiling, talking, sharing ideas. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't hiding in someone's shadow. I was standing fully in my own light. Later that night, when I got home, I poured a glass of water, kicked off my heels, and sank onto the couch. My phone buzzed. Nora again. Nora, how was the event? Any drama? Me, none. Just peace. Nora, proud of you. The old you would have thrown that drink at him.
Me, yeah.
The old me didn't know peace tastes better than revenge. I laughed softly after sending it, because it was true. Before going to bed, I checked the notes on my desk, client names, ideas, small to-do lists. It all felt solid, real, like my life finally had roots. I thought about that girl who'd once stayed up late editing proposals for someone else's dream. The girl who'd believed love meant giving until there was nothing left. I wanted to tell her that she'd survive it, that one day, she'd sit in her own apartment, running her own business, smiling at the quiet strength she never knew she had. I walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping city. Somewhere out there, people were making the same mistakes I once made, trusting the wrong person, losing themselves in someone else's world. I hoped, someday, they'd find their way back too. Because love isn't supposed to erase you. It's supposed to make you more of who you already are. And losing Tom, it didn't break me.
It rebuilt me.
When I finally crawled into bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, a deep, steady contentment. Not because I'd won, not because I'd gotten even, but because I'd finally stopped needing to. I whispered to the ceiling, half smiling, "You did good, Emily." Then I closed my eyes, and sleep came easily, quiet, soft, and whole. The kind of peace that stays.